Assalamu alaikum fam, hope you're doing well. So let's continue reading some Aristotle. This is book 1, it's like a mixture of his work. So it does have his metaphysics, logic, physics, psychology, ethics, politics, and poetics. But if you like, you can always get those ones individually. Let's continue, okay? Nonetheless, we do regard knowledge and understanding as belonging to more art than experience. Now, that's a unique statement, right? Knowledge coming more from art than to experience. Understanding coming more from art than to experience. What do you think? And we regard those who possess an art as wiser than those who have just experience, on the grounds that in every cause wisdom follows on knowledge. So here we go. Those who possess an art are wiser than those who just have only experience. So to have the art shows mastery. It shows finesse, dedication, training, instead of just experience, right? So if you are, we'll go back to sculpting. You're very good at sculpting. Your attention to detail is so great that it's hard for others to even do copies of your work. You've become a master ceramicist versus someone who's had the experience of just doing ceramics. You see? We have this attitude because those who possess art know causes, whereas the others do not. So if you possess art, you know the cause. Men who have experience know that a thing is so, but not why it is so. So you know that a thing is so, but you don't know the why. Those who know why a thing is also known is cause. So let's go that again. Those who know why a thing is so also know its cause. So if you know the why, you know the cause. Because the cause can tell you the why. This reminds me of Aquinas' argument of cause and effect, first action, and then the things that result from it, right? This is why we regard the master craftsman in any field as more deserving of respect, more knowledgeable, and wiser than manual workers, because they know the causes of the things being done. The manual workers are like certain inanimate objects in that they do things without knowing what they are doing. Fire, for instance, burns in this way, so notice that. The chef, ideally, I've met some bad chefs, and the cooks were better, but let's take the chef example. They have the art of cuisine, culinary arts. They have enough mastery of flavor profiles, cooking methods, and preparation and presentation to make something appealing to the senses. Whereas the cook, he's still good, and he still mimics what the chef has written on the recipe card. And he'll get better with time, God willing. But he's not the one who said it and made it, rather he's the one who copies it and follows the orders, right? He was not the artisan who came up with it, you see? However, whereas inanimate objects do all of these things somehow by nature, manual workers do them by habit. So, inanimate objects doing it by nature, manual workers doing it by habit. Yes. Thus, it is not on the grounds of their greater success in doing things that we judge some people to be wiser than others, but because of their grasp of principles and knowledge of causes. Aha! Grasp of principles and knowledge of causes. That one's powerful. Right? So we judge people's wisdom based upon some principles that they have grasped and certain understandings of causes, right? If you don't have a discussion on the cause, you won't really have much knowledge about it, right? You have to discuss it to gain the knowledge, look at the cause, examine it. In general, too, what distinguishes the man who has knowledge from the man who does not is the ability to teach. Very good point, right? So, that's a very good point. If you have the knowledge, you'll be able to teach it. And this is why we regard art as being more truly knowledge than experience. Those who possess art can teach, those who do not cannot. This is interesting when it comes to a lot of intellectuals having artistic habits, having things that they do in their free time. And also, everything they do becomes an art. Like if you watch a very master sushi chef from Japan, his detail, his focus, his organization of the kitchen, his presentation, everything he does, there's an art to it, the way he moves, right? This is something many have seen, even jiu-jitsu coaches, right? If they're really good, their form of fighting and the way of teaching you is very artistic. It's like, wow. You can see the finesse, you can see the mastery, and they have the ability to teach you. Further, we do not regard perception by any of the senses as wisdom. Yet it is these perceptions that form our most authoritative knowledge of individual things. That's interesting. So, perception through the senses as wisdom. We don't regard perception by them as wisdom. That's an interesting statement. Because it is, like he said, through your perceptions that you will start to really gain some knowledge of individual things. And then once you do that, you become more authoritative. Because without the senses, it's really hard for you to synthesize data, right? But they do not answer the question why. About anything. They do not, for instance, tell us why fire is hot, only that it is hot. Yeah, I mean, maybe now they can tell us, right? But back in his day, must have been quite difficult to really be like, why is fire hot? It's like, because it is, because it burns. It is therefore probable that the man who first discovered any kind of art that went beyond man's ordinary perceptions was admired by mankind not just because of anything useful that there might be in his discoveries, but also on the grounds that he was wise and superior to everyone else. So here it's like, that's interesting. So when you become great in applying your knowledge, you become the disposer of a certain art form. It goes beyond your ordinary perceptions, allows people to admire it. And if they admire it and you've gained that sort of art, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is something you can gain usefulness from. Rather, it shows that you have an attribute of wisdom and superiority and something that you have created. Very interesting, right? It is also probable that as more arts were discovered, some dealing with the necessities of life, others with its recreations, those who discovered the recreational arts were thought of as wiser than the others because their sciences were not developed to be useful. Interesting. So, recreational arts and their sciences. Hence, it was when all such sciences had been fully developed that those other ones were discovered. Those that aim neither at providing pleasure nor at coping with the necessities of life. Coping with the necessities of life. So, the very, well, it's almost like he's saying there's almost a science to hospitality, which we know there is. Because hospitality is an art form to help you cope at certain necessary tough conditions of life. A house helps you endure certain necessities of life with shelter, and the person who constructs it is the one who is like the head contractor, and he does his job well. It is like very creative in that way, you're very good at making sure everything is intact and that's not going to collapse on your head once you're in it. The way you enter into the space, you enter into the home, it gives you a feeling, and that feeling stems partly from the person who designed it. The design is part of the art form and field, right? And this happened first in those places where people had leisure. Yes, exactly. So in the areas of leisure, there is an aesthetic component that relates to art and that art's influence does help you cope. If I follow, right? Thus, it was in Egypt that mathematics was first organized, since the priestly caste there was left with leisure. Interesting. I wonder if people want to debate that. You never know. Someone who formed other parent like Machu Picchu, maybe they're like, hey, we not just Egypt. I have explained in the Ethics what differences is between science and art, and other terms of this kind. My purpose in embarking on this discussion is to show that everyone regards what he calls wisdom as being concerned with the first causes and principles. Thus, as we have said earlier, the man with experience is regarded as wiser than those who have just sensations, of whatever kind, the man who possesses an art as wiser than those who just have experience. Okay, so you're wiser if you possess an art form, and you're less wise if you only have experience. Very interesting, right? The master craftsman is wiser than the manual worker, and the theoretical sciences is more important than the productive ones. Ooh. Little economic majors going, what are you talking about? It is then clear that wisdom is a science that is concerned with certain principles and causes. I mean, most definitely, right? Through the principalities and the causes, you can realize how wisdom is done, and because there's a method and a mode, it is almost like a science, right? Step A leads to step B, get result C, right? Very interesting. What do you think, fam? It is very telling to read Aristotle. It's died a long time ago, but look, we're having fun nerding out.